Warning. This review will contain spoilers for the casting of Frank Stone. This review is entirely based on my opinion, as most usually are. Everyone's experience of the game may vary slightly or greatly based on a multitude of factors, and not everyone will share the same opinion. Whether you agree or disagree with what I have to say, I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And please, for the love of all that is holy, if you disagree with what anyone says, please do so respectfully. I'm genuinely curious to hear what each and every one of you has to say about this game. That being said, fuck this stupid ass game. Hello, Bippologists. Academically stressed Bippin here. Yes, while I have been prioritizing my studies, I have found a way to somehow manage 2 full playthroughs of the casting of Frank Stone. Behaviors branch into attempting a single-player, unless you do couch co-op, immersive horror experience set in the universe of Dead by Daylight. Behavior partnered with Supermassive Games, famously known for their choose-your-own-adventure style of horror story game, where you must make crucial decisions and be on your toes in order to help your cast of characters survive until the very end. If you still don't know who I'm talking about, Until Dawn, the Quarry. There's also the Dark Pictures anthology series, but to be honest, I haven't heard many good things about some of the stories, and I also haven't played it. So, besides, Until Dawn and the Quarry have been the most popular releases, probably being the most recognizable as well. Now, before I jump into my thoughts and opinions, let me give you some context about where I'm coming from with this game. I played both Until Dawn and The Quarry, and of course, loved them both. Until Dawn took the world by storm and was covered by several huge Let's Players. On top of this, it had a great story, a large cast of entertaining characters, multiple fun twists, a beautiful and isolated setting, and of course, a badass and spooky threat. The choices you made during the game could come back and bite you in the ass hours later, and several quick-time events keep you on your toes 24/7. Not to mention the fantastic hold still sections of the game, which made for incredibly tense moments. The choices seemed like they weren't bullshit and could be done right if the player had been paying attention and piecing clues together themselves, as well as trusting their own gut feeling. These choices were aided by the fact that for the perceptive explorers, you could find totems that show you future events through visions, hinting at different outcomes depending on the color of totem you found. The point is, it was fresh, it was fun, and it was scary. I played this game with my group of friends, and we divvied out characters to be responsible for, and we had a blast. The Quarry set a large group of teenage camp counselors at the end of summer, spending one last night together when things go awry. I think it's safe to say that The Quarry was not as good as its predecessor, but to be honest, I still had a blast playing it with my friends. It shared similar mechanics, had quite a long story, and satisfied that Supermassive Games itch that my friends and I had been longing for after Until Dawn. So, you could imagine my excitement to hear that not only was Dead by Daylight getting an immersive single-player horror story game, but that it was being developed by Supermassive Games. I was beyond thrilled. And let me tell you what, that first trailer, my god, it had me sold immediately. The graphics looked beautiful, the story looked promising, the music choice was super solid, it looked like it was going to expand the entity lore, and Frank Stone had a pretty wicked design. Yes, he looked like Trapper's distant cousin, but to be honest, he gave off a completely different vibe that I was there for. So I marked my calendars, and then the day finally came. I pre-ordered the casting of Frank Stone Deluxe Edition for about $70-some. And then the day finally came. Keep in mind, I got the game for the PS5 because I wanted to share the experience with my friends who I could only hang out with in real life. And so, we loaded up the game and had our first playthrough. And immediately from the get-go, I was disappointed. And as I kept playing with my friend, I only got more and more disappointed. Now, it's easy to say that I ramped up my expectations to an unfair level with the previous 2 games, or that I overhyped the game to a standard that wasn't possible to be met, but I had managed to work up the strength to distance myself from comparisons until I was finished with the game completely. On top of this, it was just straight up poo-poo dookie. So before I get into specifics here, if you couldn't tell by now, I want to outright say that I was quite disappointed with the casting of Frank Stone. This isn't to say that I didn't have a fun time with it here and there, because I had played the game with 2 separate groups of people. My first playthrough was me and my good friend Steven. If you're watching this, Steven, fuck you. For more context, we are both avid horror fans and have played the previous 2 Supermassive titles. The second playthrough was with my group of 3 other college buddies, who are in a writing program in school, like myself, and are not familiar with horror or horror games, let alone Supermassive games. So basically, I was getting both sides of the coin here. Both times, we had an enjoyable experience, the same way you'd laugh at a shitty horror movie or poke fun at something for being dumb. I'm gonna lay out the next few sections like this. First, I'll cover the story as I played through it, chapter by chapter. Second, I'll cover the pros, the things I did like, because there are bits and pieces here and there. Lastly, I'll end with problems I had with the game, then conclude things. Alrighty? Sound good? Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Burning Maw. This chapter acts as a prologue to the main 2 time periods we will be playing through in the main game. As a little spooky start, we see a hooded figure standing by a campfire giving us some exposition. She states her name is Augustine Lieber and that she needs Frank Stone to bring the entity into this world. Why? Who the f knows? We start off in 1963 from a dog's perspective and see Frank Stone himself right off the bat. We can hear a baby crying in the back. Either he's a kidnapper or it's bring your kid to work day. Our question is then answered when the dog runs by a conveniently placed newspaper clipping mentioning a missing infant. We are then introduced to police officer Sam Green, one of the 5 playable characters, who pulls up to the Cedar Hills steel mill in search of that missing infant. After some questions and interrogation with the night watchman Tom Holt, Sam goes to inspect the inside of the mill. He meets up with Tom again and finds Tom's dog, Merlin, feasting on some ooey gooey meaty bits, then running off. Sam gets freakishly hands-on with this meat and pulls out an ear. He remarks that the body isn't the infant, rather someone older like a teenager. After venturing further, Sam finds a grate leading to the furnace room. He tells Tom to alert the sheriff and gives him the ear, before venturing off on his own. When he reaches the eerily red furnace room, he spots the baby in a crib, just sitting on a catwalk near the boiling workplace hazard that is this furnace room. Who is this baby? I don't know. They never f***ing explain this shit. After getting closer, Sam doesn't notice the clearly present Frank Stone, who just smiles at him, then proceeds to kick his ass. After some fighting back, Sam is ultimately hooked. Wait, like from Dead by Daylight. Actually, it's a pipe that he gets impaled on, so more like he got piped. Whoa, okay, maybe not. Frank Stone then stands and stares at this f***ing child for a bit and takes his sweet time before attempting to throw it into the fire below. We see that dun dun dun, Augustine is watching from above. During that time, Sam is able to free himself and crawl over to his gun, shooting Frank Stone in the f***ing head and saving the child. Frank falls into the pit and gets a pretty gnarly jaw removal. F***ing dying in the prologue. What? Okay, so there's a lot to unpack, but I'll get into it later in the more technical parts. We conclude the chapter by Frank Stone getting entity touched as a black fog rolls in and envelops him, panning up to reveal the entity. Whoa. Chapter 2, In the House of Darkness. We are introduced to Maddie, playable character 2 of 5, where she wakes up from a spooky dream, but is still in a spooky dream. She has a pretty fancy looking entity glass. Remember that. She ends up in the forest and... are those scratch marks? Like in Dead by Daylight! She sees her dead mother with spooky black eyes, and then the mother gets entity stabbed and taken away. Ooh. Maddie wakes up on a plane, and then we're taken to her car, where we see a glimpse of an invitation of sorts that no one in their right mind could read in time. Oh yeah, also it's 2024. Yeah. Like real life. The invitation was sent by Augustine, requesting Maddie to her big spooky mansion in order to sell Augustine something. Maddie can choose to stop for a hitchhiker, but if anyone knows anything about horror, it's to never do that, so we didn't. Maddie drives right past the hitchhiker and heads to the mansion. No one answers the door, and so Maddie does the most sensible thing for anyone to do in this situation and trespasses. After some exploring, she finds a piece of sheet music with the most simplistic piano song in the entire world, that ends up being the Survivor theme. Like from Dead by Daylight! She plays the piano, which reveals a secret passageway to a room with someone already in it, and we meet Stan. Stan is our first non-playable main-ish cast character, and for good reason. You would want to kill this guy as soon as f***ing possible. He's snobbish, disingenuous, rich, and slimy. He also wears a pair of uncomfortably salmon pants. After some painful, awkward dialogue, our third playable character walks into the room. The hitchhiker revealed to be Linda Castle, an infamous horror filmmaker that Uncomfortably Salmon Stan is obsessed with to an uncomfortably salmon degree. Maddie reveals a poster for Murder Mill, a film that Linda worked on and Stan regards as cursed, mentioning that the audience flew into a murderous rage.
The CIA's got this secret lab called Leary's Memorial Institute where they use it for
Like from Dead by Daylight. Augustine walks in and she says, "Yo, what's up, party people?" She offers Maddie a drink, but she says no. If you said yes, however, Augustine would use the same entity glass like from your dream before, which I shit you not has no significance or tie to anything at all, seeming as how taking the drink does absolutely nothing to you. I'll expand upon this further later. Augustine reveals to us the point of everyone being here, to sell her their unique pieces of film from Murder Mill. How do these three strangers, besides a person who worked on it, have sections of this cursed film? Well, we'll get to that. Everyone deposits their sections and Augustine says toodles and returns to her private reliquary. We get some Augustine monologue as she reveals that the entity was present in the steel mill and Frank Stone was the key and blah 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 blah. Now she has found the means to awaken him, which we could piece together as the film strips. We are then thrust into the 80s, or just the 80 to be exact, where we see Jaime, playable character number 4 of 5, acting in a terrible low-budget horror movie in the mill. He screams about aliens who've captured him and are forcing him to choose himself or his sister to die. We are then introduced to Ding Ding Ding, the 5th and final playable character. Hope you weren't excited because she is f***ing annoying. This is Christine Gordon, Jaime's girlfriend and director of their horror movie projects, and is the, quirky one. She's whiny, loud, aggressive, and assertive. It is also revealed to us that Linda Castle is doing the camera work. A young Linda Castle, that is. After some banter, they go for another take when Sam Green walks in and startles them, causing Linda to drop the camera and it breaks. Sam tells them they can't be here, and after Jaime sensibly tells them to listen to the police officer, sorry, now sheriff, they pack up and clear out. While doing so, we get an honestly pretty great little tune that screams 80s youth and would ordinarily hype me up if these weren't the characters we were following. I'll get more into that. As they drive out, Sheriff Green tells them to stay away from the mill one last time, and the teens drive their way home. Chapter 3, A Curiosity on Main Street. I see what you f***ing did there. The friends regroup in Jaime's garage and try to stay optimistic about things, especially trying to cheer Christine up since she's being such a drama queen. Chris wonders aloud why Sheriff Green is being such an a-hole, which sparks the conversation about criminal activity in Cedar Hills. Linda pipes up about a serial killer thing that happened a while ago, and Jaime reveals he was just a baby when it happened, which is a very odd and suspicious line to throw in when we had some unnamed baby in the prologue who was saved by Sam Green. Linda reveals that Frank Stone was a serial killer that had kidnapped and killed people in the steel mill. All the information given gives Chris a movie boner, and she explains that they have to shoot in the steel mill now because it's the perfect location. She grovels over the broken camera, stating that they're going to need some money to fix it. And super convenient timing too, since Bonnie Rivera, Jaime's sister, walks in during a shouting match with her father. Bonnie has dropped her life in New York to come home and take care of their sick mother, with her complaining about the fact that her father is telling her she isn't doing enough. After calming down, Jaime asks for money to repair the camera, getting $20 and heading out with Chris and Linda to get the camera fixed. They arrive at the like from Dead by Daylight. They arrive at the drugstore, concerned that they may close before being able to repair the camera, and instead choose to head across the street to the curiosity shop. After almost leaving due to it being closed, an old lady stops them and reveals herself to be the owner, letting them in. Remember this woman, okay? Once inside, every Dead by Daylight player in existence either soils their undies or rolls their eyes, because this is a cesspool of Dead by Daylight references. So I'll spare you doing the thing multiple times and just do it once. like from Dead by Daylight. You talk to the woman about getting a new camera, and she comes back with a special one, stating she can't read the price tag without her glasses and asks you to tell her the price. In an extremely strange and underwhelming choice from the game, we are not given the opportunity to lie to the poor old lady about the price. Seems like a really easy and effective thing that the game could have done, you know, giving us a choice whether to be truthful or be a liar. But okay, the camera is magically the exact same amount of money that Bonnie gave you, whether you choose to ask her $10 or $20. In my playthrough, I bartered the price a little, but still had to pay full, except I was also given a tiny pocket mirror. Remember this stupid little f***ing thing. After obtaining the camera, Chris stops in at the drugstore because she needs to pick up milk. She talks to a new, semi-important non-playable character, Robert, who is Sam Green's son and is working behind the counter. Chris and Robert get into a little back and forth, which leads to Robert revealing that he loves horror movies, and Chris invites him to work on the movie, since he knows a way to get into the steel mill without being caught by Sam. Speaking of the dude, he walks in just as they are talking about this. Lies ensue, and that's that. Then we conclude the chapter with yet another Augustine monologue, where she reveals that Frank Stone used to be in a psychiatric hospital, referring to herself as Dr. Augustine Lieber. Eh? You see where this is going? Did you say multiverse stuff? Because that's where it's going. Yep. Not f***ing joking. She reveals that there are multiple timelines and that she was actually the old woman who gave them the camera, stating that the camera was powerful. Oh no. I mean, ooh. Chapter 4. These walls have eyes. We're back in 2024. Man, even I don't want to be here. Maddie wakes up from yet another spooky dream. Why she dozed off, I don't know. Her, Linda, and Uncomfortably Sam and Stan talk about Murder Mill for a bit and wonder about Augustine's motivations. Me too, game. Me too. Uncomfortably Sam and Stan doesn't care as long as he gets paid, but Linda and Maddie seem to be here for ulterior motives. Uncomfortably Sam and Stan suggests they check out the place, so they all go snooping around. Before they go any further, Sam reiterates how cursed Murder Mill was, and Linda stops everyone to ask how they acquired their sections of the film. Maddie reveals that it was in her mother's things and she found it after her mom died. This is where it's revealed that her mother was Bonnie Rivera, and Maddie finds out that Linda and her knew each other. It is also implied that Jaime is also now dead in 2024, with the line, "I never got to meet him," coming from Maddie. Uncomfortably Sam and Stan interject about where his film strip came from, instantly stating that the information will require a price, and when asked about said price, confusingly tells us that will come later. Why did you bring this up in the first place? They explore upstairs and find a caged door, assuming it's to the private reliquary Augustine had mentioned prior, requiring some sort of door puzzle to unlock. They continue exploring, finding a book that reveals that the sheriff of the time took all of the credit for Sam Green stopping Frank in the steel mill. Linda finds Maddie talking to her dead mother, you know, like any normal, sane, grieving person would do, and makes her feel better by telling her a story of when she saw her jamming out on the guitar in the garage. Okay then. After this, Uncomfortably Sam and Stan calls them over to look out the open window, spotting a person lurking around in the darkness. They decide to try and figure out the door puzzle since the reliquary is probably the safest place to be. The chapter ends there. Whoa. Chapter 5. The Phantom of Cedar Steel. Now we're back in 1980 in Jaime's garage, where him and Linda wait for Chris and Robert. They finally show up after their trip to the library with newspaper articles about Frank Stone, where Chris excitedly relays the news, and Robert says awkward things.
I aim to please.
Jaime is clearly a little weary about Robert as of now, but expresses his discomfort with Chris's serial killer boner, reminding her that the victims were real people. Chris, the no-hearted bitch, doesn't care in the slightest and gets annoyed that Jaime is so sympathetic to kidnapped murder victims, some of which were children. Fuck you, Chris, you annoying piece of shit. She tells him that he can stay if he wants and ends it there, where we are given control of Jaime to dick around and explore the garage. The only important thing here is a book that talks about multiple universes. Shit, not this again. Jaime talks to Linda in private, expressing her discomfort with Chris's obsession over Frank Stone. He is also clearly on edge about Robert and Chris working so closely, but that will be explored later. Linda backs up Chris a bit by reiterating that she just wanted a good location to film, before showing Jaime an idea for a new scene she had. Chris calls everyone over to reveal that they found an article that pinpointed Frank Stone's work location in the mill, the machine shop. Chris expresses her excitement to film there and they head out. Bonnie comes in and sees them leaving, curious as to what they are up to. Now outside and closer to the mill, the group heads into the wooded area to get closer. A suspicious camera angle shows us that someone is watching us from behind a tree. Spooky! After literally 20 seconds of squeezing through a rock and jumping over another, Robert reveals the choice of two different paths to take. One being across a broken-ish bridge that will take a little longer, or over the fence which will be shorter but will be closer to his father's patrol route. This choice bugs the f*** out of me, and I will explain it later, but I'll leave you with the fact that it doesn't matter which choice you make here. After a snooze-a-palooza of more walking, the gang finally makes it to the storm drain that leads them into the mill. Once they are finally in the mill, they begin to shoot with a spooky shot of Frank Stone's ashes, remains, engraving, having some spooky ghastly lights coming out of it. Ooh. After filming, Chris gives us some premature film-finished excitement before Linda reminds her about the scene that she pitched. As they head to the location, it is revealed that the person following them was Bonnie. Bonnie? You're telling me she watched them leave in the van and caught up to them by the time they got out? And she followed them through the dark forest and sewer into an abandoned steel mill? Jesus Christ, I thought she was supposed to be helping her sick mom. Anywho, after some pointless bickering, Bonnie tags along. They head into the furnace room to shoot the scene, when in the last tiny bit, an audible groaning noise can be heard. Somehow only Linda hears it, even when it happens again in total silence. Bonnie gives Linda some Frank boning eyes. And then we get a really shoehorned in scene where Bonnie calls out the similarities of the characters in the film and Jaime's life, getting aggravated that he plays the hero and is saving his sister and parents and blah 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 blah. Jaime understandably calls out that that isn't fair and they're just trying to have fun and make a movie. But Bonnie gets pissed that he's making a movie with his girlfriend while she helps take care of her mom and... Wait, what the f***? Why does she say you and dad? Wasn't she taking care of her mom? Jaime gets pissed off and Linda invites Bonnie outside to get some air. With those two gone, Jaime pulls Chris aside to express that he loved making the film with her, but she tells him it's not over yet and they should still go to the machine shop to see if they can get any more footage of things relating to Frank Stone, which again is a pretty weird thing to call out when she was the one prematurely celebrating about finishing the movie. Robert calls them over while he's looking into the Frank hole, and Chris decides to film it. While shooting, we see the little ghost orbs fly towards the camera. They then set off to check out the machine shop. They find the machine shop, and Chris points out some shit in the article about Frank Stone being the only one to know how to operate the freight transfer system. And there's a hanging train car, pointing out that it probably never got searched. They search for ways to get the power running so they can enter the door that has the key to the thing and so on. In doing so, Jaime and Robert find a like in Dead by... You remember in Dead by Daylight how generators act as not only your objective, but as sort of a downtime in between the whole chase and altruism aspects of the game? Well, hope you like doing generators in a single-player game where the only hint of action so far has been in the first chapter, goddammit. While trying to repair the generator, Robert opens with a line you never want to hear someone ask.
Hey, can I ask you something, man?
He then asks Jaime why he never asked him to work on the movie with them. Jaime says it was Chris's movie, a valid point to which Robert ignores and gets extremely awkward about. Jaime adds on the point that it was a project that he wanted to work on just as him, his girlfriend and his best friend. Another very valid point, which Robert has no part in since he's the outsider here.
We're making a horror movie, yeah, but like, I don't know. Point was for me and my girlfriend and best friend to all do something together. Like, just us.
So, I'm just in the way, then.
Oh, shut up. Like, this kind of thing would only work if they had previously established that they had a relationship in some way, or shape, or form. Like, by establishing that Robert and Jaime were friends beforehand, that would make so much more sense. He would feel left out. He would feel like he's not being appreciated. But in this sense, it's just like, oh hey, you're some guy I think I know. Why didn't you ask me to work on the movie? This shit's stupid. Robert gets pissy like the whiny little he is and assumes that whole thing to mean that he's getting in the way. Jaime says he just wants a few minutes alone with Chris and she shows up. They break to find parts for the generator and after doing so, you get to do a generator. Whoa, how fun! After that, there's more pointless, boring fetch quest bullshit that wastes a ton of time. Then you go up to the boxcar. Once inside, they find a hidden room with jars of body parts and Frank Stone's notebook full of murder weapons. Neat. They start freaking out, and Robert does the first sensible thing he's ever done and jumps ship to go tell his dad. They jump through a After escaping from the room, Chris reveals to have grabbed a hand in a jar and wants to shoot footage of it. Understandably, Jaime is pissed and shocked and becomes irritated, bringing up that Chris is spending a lot of time with Robert. Now's not a good time, buddy. At this point, my friend and I were screaming at them to break up, so we chose to dump Chris. Finally, good God. When Chris films the hand, spooky green swirly ghost stuff starts to pour in around them and sends them flying backwards. Finally, some f***ing action. Frank Stone's half-skelly boy body starts to apparate, and a door flings open to reveal a green portal, which leaves Chris holding on for dear life. Jaime flees from the spooky ghost man and leaves Chris to fly into the portal. Never mind about the action, for f***'s sake. Chapter 6. Beyond the Gate. Yippee, it's 2024 again. I'll spare you the thrilling gameplay and extremely easy to solve puzzle here, but just in case you missed it, whoa. More DVD references. Just shoot me now, please. Once the door is open, the three enter to look at a bunch of... God damn it, more Dead by Daylight references! Most importantly though, an audio broadcast of a violent crowd at a screening of Murder Mill, solidifying the cursed aspect of the film. Ooh. Linda calls out uncomfortably Sam and Stan for not being an actual fan of her movies, only her reputation. Linda finds the broken camera of hers all those years ago before finding an open book to a page describing protective talismans. The lights flicker and our mystery intruder comes up the elevator. He socks uncomfortably Sam and Stan in the face and Linda kicks him down. It is revealed to be Sam Green. Ooh. Chapter 7, A Perilous Place. Back in 1980, we find Bonnie and Linda outside, talking about Jaime. Bonnie reveals some alcohol she brought, before we find out she drank it all. Now hold on. I may hear you saying, could this explain the irrational aggression that she had, causing shit earlier with Jaime about the movie? Perhaps it could. If she acted drunk in any way. They talk about Cedar Hills, also revealing that Linda has some undisclosed reason that she wants to stay, that we never touch on again. Awesome, man. Bonnie reveals she likes women through a story about dating a girl from her band, and Linda does some hand-to-thigh touching. Whoa. It's pretty clear at this point that Bonnie seems into Linda with some of the dialogue, but before anything happens, they head back inside. Jaime runs into the room panicking, and Bonnie takes him away while Linda looks for Chris. She finds the camera, grabs it, and completely forgets about Chris, heading back to the others. When outside, Bonnie says that she couldn't get much out of Jaime other than that Chris only saw this thing through the camera. So when Frank Stone makes his dramatic entrance, Linda takes a peek. She sees Spooky Stone and they run away. This next scene cracks me up, it's so janky. Jaime and Bonnie turn and run, but for some odd f***ing reason, Linda pounds on the closed door in a really awkward looking animation. She then somehow throws open the door and runs inside in another really weird looking animation. It's then revealed by holding up the camera and shooting film of Frank Stone, you can get rid of him temporarily. Oh, good God. Linda must power a scissor lift to escape, and can you guess how she powers it? God damn. After a slogfest of more running around, repairing, and standing there and filming Frank, Linda eventually escapes. Chapter 8. Mystery Manor. Back to 2024. Sam and Linda say their hellos, and uncomfortably Sam and Stan suddenly gets an accent.
Yeah, why'd you come in swinging if you just want to talk?
Sam reveals he's here because of the film and is happy to know that everyone still has their sections of the movie, not having sold them to Augustine yet. Sam reveals that the film was a prison for an evil of sorts, and tells everyone about how uncomfortably Sam and Stan manipulated Robert out of his section of the film during a dark time in his life. Uncomfortably Sam and Stan is a jack, and so after Sam throws a punch that misses, Stan walks out. Linda tells Maddie to go after him so that no one is alone. Maddie finds not only a TV that messes with the layout of the house, but a shrine to the entity and a green hallway. She walks into a giant, crazy-looking portal room and hears a voice shouting from the center of the device. It's Chris. Don't save her, Maddie. I'm begging you. After a terribly easy and time-consuming puzzle, Maddie shuts down the machine and Chris pops out. We then cut back to a Meanwhile in Cedar Hills portion of the chapter that's incredibly short and pretty useless. It just shows Robert looking for his dad and running into Augustine's old lady curiosity shop owner self. We then go back to the chapter and we follow Linda and Sam as they look for the others. Linda reveals she wanted to sell the piece of the film because it has haunted her since the day it was created. Sam has a little bit of an episode, and while unaware, Linda takes a peek in his little pocket pouch. She finds a gun, but puts it back. Yes, this was a decision here, and I wanted the police officer, or at least former police officer who's had some training with a gun, be able to use his gun. After recovering, the lights go out and Sam disappears, causing Linda to find a strange-looking storage room. You find a bunch of stuff in there, including this lamp that I found comically stupid. Guess they never heard of antiques before. Basically, the point of this room is to really drive into your head that this is a multiverse story, god damn it. Alternate versions of Murder Mill, stuff that didn't happen in the movie, showings that never took place, you get the point. While looking at important stuff, Sam scares the audience by aggressively grabbing Linda, only to say, relax.
Relax.
Jesus Christ, man. Linda gets fed up and calls out the blaring issue that's been simmering in the back of our minds the entire time. Sam should be at least 80 according to how old she is, so why is it that he looks younger? She implies that this Sam isn't the same Sam from her timeline. Then, in case you had your thumb up your Augustine monologues about timelines and other selves. Awesome. Chapter 9, Descent of the Damned. 1980 again. This chapter sucks hella balls and is just Linda fumbling around looking for a way out back to the others. All that's important here is she finds out Frank Stone had a difficult upbringing, got psychiatric help from Augustine, and yada yada yada. She makes it back to the boiler room. Chapter 10. In the House of Madness. 2024 now, Chris comes out of the teleporting machine and meets Maddie. The first thing she sees is Maddie, of course, and says, "Bonnie? Come on. This is not how having kids works. They don't just come out as carbon copies of your own likeness. Sure, they may have similarities, but it's never just, oh look, there's that person's kid because they just look like them, but younger." And to be honest, Maddie and Bonnie don't even look that similar. Fuck you, game. Maddie reveals Bonnie was her mom, and Chris name drops Jaime, but before they can talk further, uncomfortably Sam and Stan burst into the room, claiming to be chased by something. Maddie wonders if she can help use the machine to send Chris back to her time, but Chris gets scared and pleads for her to not send her back. The machine starts up again, and uncomfortably Sam and Stan gets obliterated by the rings of the machine. This was a skill check, and my god, I mean, for all the decisions that you can make that seemingly have no outcome, a single skill check, dude, a single skill check will kill somebody. Chris and Maddie freak out, and a new figure arises from the portal device. A cloaked figure that we obviously know is Augustine. The two flee. Why are they running, man? Chapter 11. All paths must cross. Otherwise known as, this is a chapter? In the most laughably short chapter of them all, everyone meets up with each other. That's it. Fuck off. Chapter 12. Closing the Noose. Chris and Maddie have, I guess, stopped running from Augustine and are now trying to process the fact that they watched a man explode in front of them. Maddie is surprisingly chill. They explore and find a room with a music box containing a... Oh my god, you guys, I don't know if I can do this anymore. You find a book, open the book, get the winding key and play the song, where the game really makes sure to remind you for the 80th time that this is a Dead by Daylight game. If this was your first introduction to the world of Dead by Daylight, wouldn't it be incredibly strange to see a K-pop guy in a house fully designed to look like an old Victorian-esque manor? Just saying. Maddie also finds a pendant, recalling the book you saw earlier describing protective talismans. You are given a choice of who to give it to, and so I obviously gave it to Maddie, since Chris. You open a secret passageway and eventually make your way to a big glass room with a projector and screen. Linda and Sam walk in, and Linda tells Maddie that this isn't their Sam Green, saying not to trust him. Maddie says after what she saw, maybe they should. Augustine has been acting pretty sketchy. Chris walks in and has a pretty underwhelming reunion with an older Linda. Sam mentions something like this could happen before the film starts to play. Sam asks for their film strips, and as they go to pull them out, we are given a laughably bad reveal that the film strips are gone. They were snagged by master pickpocketer Augustine in the goofiest flashback reveal ever. Linda wonders aloud why Augustine is keeping them there when she has the film now. And that ends the chapter. Chapter 13. Murder Mill. Back in 1980, Frank Stone shows up to murder some children. After some awkward pauses and pacing, Linda must reload the film and Frank gets the jump on Bonnie, hooking her. Yes, like from Dead by Day, and killing her. We then jump right back to 2024, where Linda, Chris, Sam, and Maddie watch these events take place in the film. Gates come down and seal them in the room as Augustine shows up. Another jump back to 1980 sees Robert guiding his dad into the steel mill, before Sam tells him to wait outside. Sam finds Bonnie's body and almost shoots his dumb son, before telling him once more to stop following him and wait as he heads underground, where he hears screams. He finds the camera and somehow knows to shoot film of Frank Stone to get rid of him. I promise you, it's almost over. Sam finds Jaime impaled on a pipe and attempts to help him off the wall. Frank Stone shows up in a corner that doesn't give you enough space to save this guy. Seriously, I've seen some people get rid of Frank in this scene and it still baffles me. He shows up and you can't record him in time because you're stuck in a little corner. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. He pushes Sam aside and rips out Jaime's jaw, killing him. Okay then. Bullshit. Sam finds Linda and helps her up, before Frank Stone shows up yet again. Seriously, I don't know what the happened here, but this is the slowest, most awkward scene ever. It's supposed to be really tense, but what we instead get is one incredibly short sucking action gameplay where you have to hold the two buttons, and then the rest is just drawn out shots of Sam f***ing up Frank Stone for what seems to be a painfully awkward amount of time. Robert even comes in, for the second time not listening to his father, and just stands next to Frank. Like, why are you doing that? Who does this? Linda decides to give us a stupid-ass eye-rolling one-liner.
What's happening?
Moving magic.
Oh, shut up. And then Frank gets stoned. He gets trapped in the camera. Why is this time different? I don't know. Chapter 14, The Massacre at Garant Manor? Oh, thank God. We're on the final chapter. It's 2024 now, and the homies are still watching the film. Sam shouts at Augustine as Frank Stone begins to emerge from the film screen. Chris, like the dumbass she is, walks up to the emerging Frank Stone because pretty lights! She gets grabbed by the throat, but is managed to be pulled away. Augustine does some spooky chanting, only to reveal that the talisman Maddie was wearing was actually her downfall. She is mind-controlled almost, walking herself in a trance over to Frank Stone. Sam has a moment to either shoot the pendant or Frank, but honestly I didn't even have enough time to process it was a timed thing and failed to do anything, causing Maddie to get straight up consumed by Frank Stone's gnarly mouth tummy. Frank Stone breaks free from the screen and rises, as everyone splits up. Sam and Chris head in one direction and Linda goes her own way. Frank really takes his sweet time here, as the others pull open the gates and run away. He chooses to pursue Linda. Linda finds the power not working for the elevator, so she ends up at a oh God. After fixing it, Linda heads back into the hallway and Frank bursts out from the wall. She manages to escape and go down the elevator. She finds herself in the portal room and confronts Augustine from afar, before heading back upstairs to the reliquary. Stone breaks through the wall and chases Linda before Sam barges in. Linda tries to help but gets her neck snapped. Frank chases Sam and Sam escapes, not before giving another out-of-place goofy one-liner.
Holding one, motherfucker.
Why did he say that? I almost forgot to mention that there's a point in time where Chris ends up back in the projector room. You are given the option of whether you want to go through the portal or stay in the modern time, and we tried to go through the portal, resulting in her death. Yes, she dies here by burning alive because we got the pocket mirror. Feels kind of strange. Just feels like we didn't really have much choice here, or clues as to what that would be or what that would do, so it just kind of feels, bull. Augustine walks outside and looks up at the entity in the sky, which is pretty cool, I guess, if my game hadn't bugged out with one of the tendrils missing a texture and looking like a giant fluffy white furball. She revels at it all, and Frank Stone comes up behind her, slicing her and offering her to the entity. What did you expect? The entity endgame collapses her, and Augustine freaking dies. We then see Sam in the woods, starting to come up on little hallucinations that I believe could be the entity pulling memories and stuff. You know, how like it does when it creates maps. These memories involve Linda, Robert, and Sam in the aftermath of the 1980 segment, developing the film that contains Frank Stone and separating it into 3 film strips that they will each keep and never bring back together. Kinda makes you question why Linda wanted to offer hers up and was in the same room as 2 other people that also had this and were selling it to one person, which should have set off an alarm bell. But I'm almost done, I swear. Sam walks along with another Augustine monologue as you can very vaguely hear the Dead by Daylight theme start to kick in. He ends up at a campfire with Dwight? Claudette? Like from... They don't respond for obvious reasons, and Frank Stone shows up to sit in the bushes like a little creep. He watches onward, like the lobby screen from Death. And then Augustine leaves us off with a "Let the trial begin" line, and we hear the noise. The noise like from Death. Jesus Christ, I spent way too long on that. Now that you're all caught up with the events of the story, as my friend and I chose them, let's get into the pros and cons. We'll start with what I enjoyed about the game, because despite my tone and overall impressions, there are hints of things I did like. The premise. Yes, despite the overall writing and pacing of the game being terrible, I did enjoy the premise. I think young horror filmmakers looking to break into an abandoned steel mill to shoot their movie, only to run into something horrifying, is a great premise for this kind of game. It feels campy, a tad bit cliche, but that's mostly what you want when creating an 80s aesthetic slasher horror. What saves it from being like the rest is the characters you build, the story you craft around it, the setting and world you put them in, and the events that take place. So yeah, I'll stop there. Cool premise, at least for the 1980s bit. This is what I was talking about with that first trailer. Linda. Yep, Linda. Linda was the only character I enjoyed. Her personality, her look, her overall vibe, I very much enjoyed. I liked seeing her both old and young, but besides that, I can't give a flying shit about any of the others. Except for Jaime a little. I didn't really enjoy his character, I just kind of felt bad for him the whole time. The music. Some of the soundtrack in this game is actually pretty sweet. I've always been a fan of movie scores and game soundtracks, as setting the scene and conveying an emotion without lyrics is a tough weight for soundtracks to have to carry. It has to be enough to not distract you from the dialogue, whilst also aiding scenes in their action, emotional weight, and so on. So I will admit there are a few great compositions to come from the casting of Frank Stone, specifically the almost sinister-esque track we get when Linda is searching through the alternate universe Murder Mill stuff. Also, the theme when Frank Stone breaks free from the projector in the final chapter is really cool. I do also kind of like that chase theme that plays when you're physically running from Frank Stone in the final chapter, although I think it falls flat when it gets to that certain part. So yeah, point is, cool music, graphics. It's no lie that this game looks beautiful. The lighting, for most parts, is great. The textures are pretty solid and the environments are pretty well constructed. The facial animation can be a little uncanny here and there, but for the most part it looks great. I think a good example is showing some of the facial expressions Chris makes when talking to Robert in the drugstore. Stuff looks pretty good here, I'm not gonna lie. Frank Stone. Kinda. I'll admit it, I think both the living Frank and the undead Frank both have pretty solid designs. The living Frank, for the mere minute or two we get to see him, is pretty great. He gives me that industrial type dirty horror feel that the Trapper gives me. The mask design is pretty wicked too. The undead Frank is... it's alright, I guess. I like the mouth stomach. I like how the mask is kind of fused with his face and he has those little mandibles. Not gonna lie, pretty good design-wise. Wish he was in more of the game though. Alright, now it's time to talk about what I wasn't a fan of. Performance/optimization. Holy shit, I cannot express to you how disappointed I was with this aspect of the game. So again, let me remind you, I was playing this on the PS5. For starters, when you launch the game, it shows you on the menu that you can press triangle to access the accessibility menu. That, to this day, doesn't work. I don't know what's in there. You can't access that menu. Jesus Christ, why did they even put it here? On top of this, over half of the display settings are locked. Thanks, game! For many sections of the game, the frames tanked. The game crashed once or twice also. Textures would load in pretty slowly and be quite jarring, especially when walls loaded in right in front of your face. At one point we had to reset the game because one of the characters stopped on a thin staircase in the sewer section and we couldn't move or go past them. There was a point where Jaime even started T-posing. Almost every time the camera cut to a different angle, there was a black screen for a quick second or models had to load in, causing this very awkward jump whenever the camera angle changed. I don't know, take a look at the character models next time it changes the camera angle. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything else, but yeah, super disappointed with this. Shameless Dead by Daylight reference. If you couldn't tell by the running gag I did during the recap, there are a lot of references to Dead by Daylight. There are 12 collectibles that are all killer add-ons that can be found in little chests from Dead by Daylight. There are several collectible killer dolls of the killers from the trials. There's Huntress's mask, Wraith's weapon, a book about the dredge, generators, mentions of Larry's memorial, sound cues, the Trickster music box, musical themes, name drops, you name it. It gets so repetitive. Most, if not all of these references don't even need to be in the game either. They serve no narrative purpose except for the entity, and they don't do anything with the entity as well. It really does seem like a shameless shill for Dead by Daylight, with so many point and ogle at the thing you know moments. I find that most stories told in the same universe as a pre-existing title do a lot better when they focus on an actual narrative reason for references, or just don't include that many references. Prioritize the writing, not the point and moments. Take the Netflix show Arcane, for example, a masterfully done story that takes place in the League of Legends universe. While there are tons of references to League of Legends, the game, they are intelligently integrated into the narrative. They have purpose. They have meaning. You know, except for when they show Cute Thing, because Cute Thing is cute. And even then, it doesn't hinder my experience at all, since every one of the other references are ones that fit into the story and are engaging. If someone who has never played League of Legends before watches Arcane, the story will still make sense. Then, if they choose for some odd reason to go play League of Legends, they'll come into the game with the knowledge of these characters, how they act, their relationships with each other, and so on. My point here is, don't throw in references just to have references. It was cool here and there, and maybe I would have liked it had it stopped at the collectibles and killer dolls, but I just feel like it's way too much fan service. The length. Yep, this game was super short compared to other Supermassive titles. I believe my friend and I completed the story in around 5 hours. In a game like this, you want your story to feel fleshed out. In a story like this, it seems like they couldn't do that. It seems very, very rushed. It seems like everything was kind of starting and then it ended. Take for instance, the maybe 3 or 4 chapters in the game that actually felt like 2 minutes or 1 minute. I swear to God that one chapter was literally like less than a minute. Compare it to a chapter of like Until Dawn or The Quarry and it feels like you're playing like an hour per chapter. It feels like it has more weight. It feels like it has more staying power, you know? Now, this length of the game wouldn't really be that much of a problem if it wasn't for the gameplay. Good God, was this shit boring. There's about 90% dialogue and looking around and about 10% action sequence, and 10% of that action sequence I'm counting as you looking at Frank Stone and holding 2 buttons to f***ing get rid of him. Now before anybody goes down to the comments to point it out, I'll point it out myself. I'm aware that Supermassive titles aren't really gameplay centric. They're more like playable horror movies that you can just choose choices and somewhat affect what happens based on like QuickTime events and aiming minigames and stuff like that. So I'm not looking for a full-fledged gameplay here, but I'm still looking for something that's interesting. On top of this, it feels as though your choices don't mean shit in this game. There were so many instances where they just didn't matter. For instance, the thing I mentioned before. Do you go over the fence and risk being closer to the sheriff for a quicker route, or do you go across the broken bridge, which takes longer? They both do the same shit. The only thing that changes is you get a different collectible for each path. I said this before, but why do we make the decision? Why is this a decision? This is also a great example of another problem I have with the gameplay. Why aren't there as many QTEs? For those who are new to this, QTE stands for QuickTime Event, where one must quickly press a button or complete some sort of reactionary action before the time runs out. Supermassive is known for their QTEs. It's the only action sections of the game besides the shooting minigames or the don't move minigames. And yes, we have the skill checks, but where the f*** are they? If you choose to take the broken bridge, everybody is just suddenly over there. Why aren't there QTEs for going across like they do in their other games? For example, in Until Dawn, you can choose to take shortcuts or try different ways of doing something which may result in more QTEs. It's a decision that rewards the player's skill and makes their choices matter. If you go over the fence, you end up having to hide from a very conveniently placed Sam, who even f***ing calls out for somebody like he just knows that they're there. My God, this game. And the kicker is you don't have to do anything. Anything at all. You'd expect if the game had the don't move feature, then this would be a great time because you'd have to hold still in order to not make a noise or alert him of your presence. Even then, you don't have to do anything here. There isn't like a skill check or a QTE or anything. You just sit there and watch. That's the risk this game presented. It set you up with the risk that you would be closer to the sheriff, and the risk ultimately wasn't paid off because you didn't have to do shit. It's just a cutscene, and that's it. And this happens multiple times. In a game that hammers into your head how important your decisions are, you don't really get to make many meaningful ones. Another example is when Augustine offers Maddie a drink. You can choose to accept it or not. And most of us with functioning brains chose not to, as that puts the character at risk of being drugged or poisoned. Funny thing is, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter. If you take the drink, the only thing that you notice is that Augustine has the same entity glass that was in Maddie's dream. Who the cares? And don't even get me started on the camera mechanic. During the very few moments of the game where Frank Stone is actually chasing you, you have to record him with the camera to make him go away. Yes, the main way to dispel the villain is to hold your camera still and record him. Sure, he knocks your vision around a little bit, but it's boring, dude. To further my point about the choices not having any impact on the game, I found this article when looking up some of the different paths you can take. An article that states the 8 most impactful choices in the casting of Frank Stone. I shit you not, One of them is just for an achievement, and most of them are just not having to do with the character's fates at all. And the funniest part about it all, is the example with the drink I used is number one, the biggest impactful choice you can make in the game, which by the way is wrong, because they state that if you take the drink and take the pendant, then you will be mind controlled, when in my playthrough, I didn't take the drink and the pendant still did things to me. So thanks, article. Yeah, they rated it a 10 out of 10. The story. Oh boy, where do I begin? I gushed about the first trailer for the game, and I stand by it. The story it presents is far more intriguing, just being that these kids want to go film a horror movie in an abandoned steel mill and there's a serial killer about. It presents itself as a kind of slasher thing, which is perfect for Dead by Daylight because most of the killers in the game are slashers. The actual final product, though, ends up being a shitty multiverse horror story about kids you don't care about and adults you don't care about, involving a woman who wants to bring the entity into our world, because that never gets explained. You know, now that I think of it, there are tons of things that don't get expanded upon. Augustine's motivations, Sam 2024 being an alternate timeline version, Maddie's dreams essentially warning you about Augustine, who the Frank Stone is exactly and why he's the key, etc, etc, etc. It's as if the writers forgot how to operate a firearm when presented with Chekhov's gun. Okay, you know, let's just continue on to the characters. As I stated before, Linda's the only character I liked. Bonnie and Jaime came close, but both made very questionable out-of-line decisions and started shit for no reason. Let me quickly cover what I didn't enjoy about each character. Jaime seems like a nice, reasonable, caring guy, but he flips on a dime so often that I find it hard to really get behind him most of the time. He's just kind of a sad character. Even if you choose all of the dialogue paths about not f***ing with Frank Stone and even calling out Chris for having a weird obsession with him, you find the literal hideout with dismembered corpses in it, and Jaime gets whiny and says, well, what about the movie? And stuff. Like, my dude, everything else bothered you, and this isn't where you're drawing the line? Bonnie was pretty cool, I guess, although underutilized, and I don't like how aggressive she got with Jaime. I feel like we needed to see Jaime being more of a jerk, or being too lazy to help out with taking care of his mom or something like that, for Bonnie actually snapping to feel like it had merit. Chris... Jesus, where do I start with Chris? Chris is aggressively annoying. Like, the character feels annoying, but not intentionally annoying. Like, say, Emily from Until Dawn. No jokes land with Chris, and she's the jokester. She has little to no empathy or compassion, and I hate her. She makes a lot of stupid decisions, and just gets people pissed off for no reason. This was the character my friend and I discussed killing. And there's definitely a reason that I'm using her death as the censor noise for this video. Sam is alright, I guess. He's just boring is all. Not much to say about him. Maddie is also incredibly annoying. Like, she's super vapid in nature and she just talks to herself. Well, she says she's talking to her dead mother, Bonnie, but, you know, she also says a lot of stupid shit to herself.
How are you doing in there? Dumb question, Maddie. You know what they say about keys. Gotta be a lock nearby. No one says that, Maddie.
Ooh, nobody says that, Maddie. Ooh, why did I say that, Maddie? Like, oh my god, it's annoying, dude. Which speaks to another aspect of the game I would like to rant about in a mini fault here. The writing, especially the dialogue. There are so many interactions that are so incredibly stiff or strange. Not in like a realistic way, but more so like a who the f*** wrote this kind of way. It also doesn't help that another problem seems to be the voice acting. Yeah, not gonna cover this too much, but a lot of the voice acting for this game sounds very amateur. A lot of the voice lines are said incredibly awkwardly. I swear there were a few voice lines from Uncomfortably Sam and Stan where he suddenly gained an accent.
Yeah, why'd you come in swinging if you just want to talk? I gotta hand it to you. You are looking better than the last time I saw you, yeah? Who's your guy?
Everyone just sounds very awkward, and there are certain lines that come out just how you would not expect them to come out. I noticed this almost immediately when Sam said,
What was that sound?
why does he say it like that? You know, when people say that, it's usually, what was that noise? Or, what was that? You know, something like you're surprised. But who says it like that? Frank Stone. Yes, I know I had a Frank Stone on my pros list too, but, yeah, this is a different part about Frank Stone. Yes, my problem with him lies in that he doesn't have a character. He really does have no character. Besides the very few notes that you get that explain that he had a troubled past and was manipulated by Augustine, there is seriously little information explaining our main spooky villain. On top of this, like, why? Why does Augustine need him? Why does he have to be the killer? Is it because he was somebody who could be easily manipulated? Is it because he has a bad past and he wants to take out his anger? Like, can you explain something about this guy? On top of this, he's hardly in the f***ing game. My god, for a game that has his name in the title, he's in about 5 to 10% of it. No, not even 10. He's in about 5% of this shit. Why did he have to be a spooky ghost? Why couldn't we have just got a story about a serial killer? Why did we have to jump through all these hoops? Multiverse Story. Okay. You've heard the famous multiverse story equals bad story argument before, but trust me, I'm not on that boat. Yes, multiverse stories have had their period of popularity, but there have been fantastic iterations of them. Take any of the Spider-Verse movies, or Everything Everywhere All at Once, for example. But this... Firstly, they don't do the multiverse story well at all. It's an excuse to have your playable character that was solely playable in the prologue appear for a bit in the 2024 segments, and that's it. It's not interesting, it's not innovative, and the story doesn't do anything to make it fresh. Secondly, this is a horror game. It's Dead by Daylight, for f***'s sake. There are so many interesting stories that you can tell in this universe, and you choose multiverse? What happened to expanding the lore of the entity? And before you comment it, yes, I am aware that Dead by Daylight is technically already a multiverse story. To those that are unaware, when killers and survivors get plucked from their world and placed into the entity's realm, they are plucked from different universes. Some can be in the same universe, like Sable and Michaela, two best friends that were separated after Michaela was taken into the entity's realm, only for Sable to follow in search for her. Where this multiverse idea helps mostly is explaining the licensed characters, as thinking about it as a whole, if you were to pluck the Chucky that we all know and love from his movie universe and plop him in the entity's realm, there would be no more Chucky movies. Chucky would be gone. But instead, the entity picks a Chucky that is practically the exact same from an adjacent universe, and voila! Your logic works. But honestly, that's where it should end in my opinion. Dead by Daylight doesn't need to delve into the intricacies of a multiverse and explain all that shit. No one cares enough. They just want to see their favorite horror characters in this game. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, why the f*** did they make this a multiverse story, god damn it? The ending. There's a lot to say about this ending. For starters, when you're playing a Supermassive game, and I know this isn't a definitive thing, this isn't set in stone, Frank Stone. But the whole point of the game is to try and make decisions that keep your characters alive, that try and keep them to get to the end, to make them have a happy ending. Spoilers again for Until Dawn. In Until Dawn, you're trying to get all of your characters to make it to the end and survive all the attacks in order to get rescued by these helicopters that come at dawn. If you save everybody, they get to tell their story. In the ending credits, they literally are being interviewed. In this game, the ending, no matter how you play it, is going to be however many characters you kept alive end up in the entity's realm, because it has to be a tie-in to the trials. Now yes, I know there's kind of no going back from summoning the entity into your world, but having your ending just kind of shift a tiny bit depending on who you keep alive, and on top of that your ending always ending in a bad way, just doesn't make any of the f***ing slop you sit through worthwhile at the end. The problem it poses is that literally killing your characters is the better outcome for them. It's either they die and they pass on, or they end up in the entity's realm for all of eternity, where they're going to be kept alive, tortured, and killed over and over again for a long time. So it just, I don't know, the endings just irked me that way, and they made me really angry, and it's getting into my last point here, which is, this is a big trailer for Frank Stone. It's pretty obvious that they're going to eventually add Frank Stone into Dead by Daylight at some point. They've already got the survivors, they've already got skins, they've already got their killer, they've already got the backstory. Hell, they've even already got their music. They've pretty much got everything they need here to put Frank Stone in the game. And the thing is, many people will buy it. So what this ended up feeling like was just a big, long trailer for the killer. And I know that's been said before as kind of like a little joke, or, well, mostly seriously. But still, it's disappointing, you know? I don't want a big long trailer for Frank Stone coming to Dead by Daylight. I want a game, I want a narrative, I want a story, I want something that would make, you know, me feel like I'm actually doing something here, like the other stories did, like the other games did. I know I've mentioned my comparisons with Until Dawn and The Quarry, and it's easy to say that I was looking for the same thing here, when clearly that hasn't been the case for a while, but the truth is I'm not looking for the same thing here. I'm just looking for the things that made those games so fun. The creativity, the writing, the characters, the choices, the overall narrative, the music, the atmosphere. I just want something on that level again, and I don't know if I'm gonna get it. And so that's kind of where I'm gonna end my cons section off. I've been rambling for a long time, and I feel like I've gotten my point across. It doesn't help that I'm currently playing through the Until Dawn remake and falling in love with it all over again, since it's just such a breath of fresh air compared to this I know I mentioned not comparing the two before, but it's really hard not to. This developer studio caught our attention and stole our hearts with Until Dawn. And also, when you're a developer studio and you're most famous for one game, you really kind of have to focus on what made that game so special. I know a lot of people may make the argument that Supermassive's choose-your-own-adventure style of video game was new and fresh, and that's why everyone enjoys Until Dawn. But that would be overlooking everything that's great about it. It was long, it was enjoyable, it had good writing, it had good jokes. I laugh out loud to this day at some of them. It was a replayable experience that was equal parts moody and equal parts fun, and equal parts scary. Setting all that aside, I wanted to conclude this review with a hint of positivity. Despite my, as well as many others apparently, frustration and dissatisfaction with the casting of Frank Stone, I don't want the negative outlook to discourage both behavior in Supermassive games. For Supermassive, yeah, the title flopped pretty hard, but don't exclude collaborating with other properties or not making a new original game. I feel as though more time and a larger focus on the overall writing could have served this game wonders. I mean, one of the complaints I've had earlier is that it feels incredibly unfinished or rushed. It feels like a ton of the ideas just never stuck or just never kind of came to fruition. They were just there to be there. Secondly, for behavior, I don't want this to discourage them from branching out and exploring different types of games in the Dead by Daylight universe. The thing is, like I mentioned before, Dead by Daylight has a lot of extremely interesting backstories and lore. Several of these characters or narratives could work incredibly well as films, television shows, or other styles of video game. I want them to branch out, to be honest, but this time, let's not do this. And that's where I'm gonna end it. This has been a long rant/review, but I wanted to express my feelings on this game, since I had been looking forward to it for a long time and I was severely disappointed. It also kinda stung, since I'm a huge fan of Supermassive's style of game. They make extremely fun and engaging horror experiences that I can share with my friends and have a good time with. On top of this, I play Dead by Daylight all the time. Hell, I make videos for that game. So of course I'm gonna feel like I had a little bit more of a say, or I was a little let down with a property that really is kind of tying into what I do, what I enjoy, what I like, what I play. So basically, what I'm gonna leave you with here is, if you played the casting of Frank Stone and haven't played Until Dawn, go play Until Dawn, or even The Quarry. I know people didn't like it as much, but either way, it's still a great game, especially to play with friends. And again, please remember, if you enjoyed the game, this isn't me trying to say that you shouldn't or that you didn't. I'd be glad if you enjoyed the game, to be honest. Whether you agree or disagree with me, I would still love to hear your experience in the comments with this game. Were you surprised? Were you let down? Were you pleased by some things? I don't know. Please let me know, because I'm interested. Anyways, I've been your host, academically stressed Bippin, and this was a bad idea to work on so close to my midterms. Please, please pray for me. There will be a 101 video next, I promise. Have a great day, everybody. God, I paid $70 for this shit.